has too much on his plate right now?
Not at all. He's got great lieutenants that back him up at SpaceX, back him at Tesla, Boring, and Neuralink. You don't have to worry about that.
And that stock is down 54% year to date. It has been a long slide.
All right, so is Tesla dropping Model Y production in China or not? That is the question. The market seems to have decided the answer based on early reports and ignoring the conflicting reports to that report. Say production is fine.
In this video, which I would describe as bizarre if it weren't entirely predictable, for some strange reason, the mainstream finance media continues to report that Tesla has cut production in Shanghai while simultaneously pointing out that Tesla has already refuted these claims as being false. The media still continues to proceed as if they're legitimate. If I didn't know any better, I'd be a little bit confused as to why this is happening. But I do know better, and I'm not surprised. Are you? We'll also be hearing the bull case for Tesla, or specifically Tesla stock, from an analyst. And just a quick warning, I posted a deeply disturbing, in fact, I would go as far as to say horrifying video on Patreon today. If you can handle going that far down the rabbit hole, check it out. It is an absolute must watch. I just cannot believe what we've learned. If you're not already a member on Patreon, you can join with the card in the corner or the link in the pinned comment. Fair warning, after watching today's exclusive Patreon video, you may never see the world the same way again.
Take a look at Tesla because it is a huge mover to the downside. New reports today saying that Tesla is planning to cut production at its Shanghai facility by about 20%. We're looking at losses of nearly 7% right now. Now, Tesla has been pushing back on those reports, saying that that is simply untrue.
As I said in the intro, if I didn't know any better, I'd be surprised. Why is it that these media outlets continue to report that there are reports that have been refuted by Tesla that they're cutting production in Shanghai? Why continue to regurgitate the fact that this may be happening, there may be production cuts, when Tesla themselves have refuted these as flat out false reports? Unless, of course, you're being controlled by the short sellers. Of course, that's just hypothetical because that would never actually happen. I'm definitely not suggesting that the mainstream finance media's primary role is to help make short sellers insane amounts of money by purveying bullshit and fake news. Seriously though, guys, the whole point of today's video is to feature the discussion in the media over and over and over. It's almost as if the truth doesn't matter. These are essentially false allegations that have been refuted, yet these false allegations continue to be shared as if they may be legitimate. It's a little bizarre, unless you understand why and how the world works. The way a lot of the reporting we'll see further in today's video goes is something like this. Despite Tesla refuting claims about production being slashed in Shanghai, we still want you to think that this may be true, even though Tesla themselves have flat out said this is false. So we're going to report that these claims have been refuted, but then also say, if the reports are true, just to get you thinking, oh my God, should I be scared? Should I be selling my Tesla stock? Let me give you an example I hope some of you can relate to. Let's just imagine, hypothetically speaking, that some rumors surfaced that some guy with 3 first names on YouTube had forced himself upon a viewer's girlfriend. And of course, the media runs with this allegation. Guy with 3 first names from YouTube, blah, blah, blah's viewer's girlfriend, highly inappropriate. Next minute, let's cancel this guy. Then, both the guy with 3 first names and the woman in question both released statements saying there was no forcing, this was consensual, and then also decide to release the video they made during the encounter. Let me just play a short clip from the video right now. Toro, papi, toro! Mastorizo, papi! Just to verify the fact that she really did want more sausage and there was no forcing upon anyone. Yet despite this, the media continues to run with these allegations, despite having been refuted by the people involved. What if they're true? Let's just ignore the evidence. Let's just ignore everything because we want to purvey a certain narrative.
Here to discuss it is Ray Wong, Constellation Research and Principal Analyst and Founder. Ray, it's great to have you in studio. Certainly judging by the street's reaction, a huge concern here. If Tesla is in fact cutting production, they're denying it. What's your take?
Interesting. Now, I want to be fair on the anchors here. They are just talking about what's going on here. Tesla stock getting wrecked down about 7% on this news that had been refuted by Tesla. The stonk market not believing the refutation of these false allegations. Tesla's like, this is bullshit. Well, the stock market disagrees. The stock market just watched that excerpt from the sex tape and thought, that doesn't seem consensual to me. Just because she's begging for, you get the point, right? Let's move on.
Well, I look at it this way. The market is growing. China reopen is actually happening. And if you look at their ability to actually crank out more than 100,000 units per month, they're set to go 1.2 to 1.5 million out of that gigafactory. If you look at the economic conditions, I think they're not going to be cutting back, right? And so even if there's a report that they're cutting back, it may have been before when they thought the lockdowns were going to be extended further out. All signs look like they're opening up. And I think that's why Tesla may have doubled back and said, we're not going to be cutting back.
I want to circle back to Tesla, but broadly speaking, are we to believe that Xi Jinping is listening to the people of China and reopening as a result? I'm skeptical.
No, it's a great question. And I think that the protest made enough of an impact on the party apparatus. You noticed in every single province, they pretty much lessened their restrictions. They started to create some openings. Meanwhile, they're jailing all the protesters, right? So that's still going on.
That's right. After approaching 3 years of the absolutely unbelievable, horrifying Black Mirror episode that is the CCP's insane, completely futile, fascist and inhumane attempt at Plague Zero, or whatever you want to call it, for your protection, not our control of you, the people of China have gotten to the point where they're willing to protest and get thrown in jail to send a message to the absolutely insane CCP, which still, as far as I'm aware, until recently, was welding people's doors shut to ensure they wouldn't leave their homes for their protection, delivering food to apartment complexes for your protection, dragging people off to quarantine facilities against their will for your protection. Finally, there is a glimmer of light at the end of this very dark tunnel. There's a very valuable lesson here, one that unfortunately the people who rage quit this channel around 2.5 years ago when I started pointing out where things were heading will never learn. If you don't push back against bullshit when you see bullshit, the bullshit will grow and grow and grow and grow, making it even harder to push back against said bullshit in the future. Just saying.
Right, when you take a look at Tesla, where it's trading today after this drop, right around 181 a share. You have a price target on it right around $200 a share. What's it going to take to get us there? And are you confident Tesla's going to have that momentum? Because we're not only talking about Tesla, but of course the distraction with Twitter has some Tesla investors a little bit concerned.
I'm not worried about Elon. That guy can multitask. He's got massive ADD. He's on the spectrum and he's going after everything at the same time.
But you don't think he has too much on his plate right now?
Not at all. He's got great lieutenants that back him up at SpaceX, back him at Tesla, Boring, and Neuralink. You don't have to worry about that. The real issue is the subsidies that China provides for the EVs expire at the end of the year. And that could be the pullback reason. But if you see that race between BYD and Tesla, it is a huge race, right? They're cranking neck and neck on 1 and 2 in China. And China right now is something like 35% plug-in and 23% like pure electric. I mean, hybrid, right? And that number is only growing. So almost 60% of their marketplace is electric or hybrid.
And that stock is down 54% year to date. It has been a long slide.
Sure has. Just between you and I hope this slide continues. The longer the better, baby. Still buying with every spare cent.
It's interesting, Seth, because in the month of November, Tesla had a record month for domestic deliveries, more than 100,000 units. We're getting some sense, if these reports are accurate, that they're looking at the near-term demand and pulling back. What's your read on this?
I think Ed here is a little bit conflicted. It's interesting means this seems to make no logical sense. Tesla's had a record month in November. Record month, as in a record month. Yet then we hear reports that seem to suggest they're cutting back production after a record. What? So Ed even is conflicted. And then he goes, if these reports are true, we know they're bullshit. But anyway, the media continues to proceed as if they may be potentially true.
Well, my read is that, they started off the quarter very well. If you look at the first 2 months of the quarter, they were selling at production based on the new expanded capacity at the Shanghai plant. Then you're seeing at the same time, the new energy vehicle market in China is seeing slowing sales growth. And due to potential macro headwinds, we could see a downturn next year, especially as subsidies fall off. So I think this is Tesla taking a look and saying we need to adjust production so we're not caught with a lot of excess inventory ending the year.
I want to point out that we asked Tesla to comment on this Bloomberg report. They did not respond or comment on the report. Local media reports in China or coming out of China said that it was false.
Again, Ed opens this up going, this doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. But anyway, these reports exist. Why do you think Tesla is cutting production? Guy gives reason as to why Tesla would be cutting production. Then Ed goes, oh, by the way, we should probably point out we asked Tesla for comment and they didn't comment, but Tesla China has officially refuted these claims. But let's pretend that they might actually be true anyway, because that's more fun.
Even so, China's an interesting market, Seth, because there are many more domestic players offering many more models than perhaps here in the United States or in Europe. What kind of a lever can Tesla use for pricing when it comes to demand and getting some more demand built up in that market?
So we've seen Tesla and other Chinese automakers cut prices in recent months as a way to try to spur demand. And I think that can happen. But, when you look at Tesla in China, they don't have the inherent competitive advantages that they do in the US or Europe. They don't have their own charging network built out. They're not using their proprietary battery technology, so they don't have the technological advances to the extent that they do elsewhere. And so, while they still are thought of as a reputable and high quality name, they just don't have as big of a lead in China as they do elsewhere. And that's why we see lower long-term sales growth in the Chinese market for Tesla.
Seth, it's so interesting because when I first saw the headline, I thought,
I hope you guys understand how much I'm having to bite my tongue here. When I read that headline, if you don't get it, you don't get it. Not explaining it. Let's move on.
oh boy, here's another company being hit by supply chain issues, being hit by the supply side, not the demand side. And therefore, to that end, has Tesla been able to ramp in Shanghai as it wanted to? Are we likely to see it remain committed to the space?
I think we'll see them remain committed to Shanghai. It's a low cost of production for them, and they use that factory to export elsewhere, to Europe, to the rest of the markets, especially in Asia, the Middle East, and Africa. So I think they'll still be producing, that will be one of their key factories, even as they ramp up Berlin and Austin to their long-term growth plans.
Talk to us about whether Shanghai can be more useful to them as an exporting hub more generally, or how much is this really to serve the local community? How much do they ship across to Europe, to the US? Are they making sort of it from a perspective of profitability? Is it a good choice to be able to ship from Shanghai or no?
I think it's a good choice because it's a lower cost of production. China is still the largest auto market, so it's important to be there, be producing there, and be able to manufacture in China to sell to the Chinese consumers. But Tesla also is trying to grow their presence throughout the rest of Asia. They're trying to grow in the Middle East and in Africa, and that Shanghai factory allows them to do so and focus more on those markets, even as they ramp up Berlin to serve the European market.
Hey, Seth, I wanted to get your take on slightly something different, which was the semi-truck event, which they held recently. The reason it came to mind is I was looking in the investor deck from last quarter and the table of the different products produced in different parts of the world. Shanghai is Model Y, Model 3, semi-truck just in Reno, Nevada right now. And it got me thinking about how they manage all of this, prioritize resources, for example, with semi-truck, particularly resources as it relates to batteries. Do you think that they can pull that off?
I think they can because they produce different batteries based on the different factories as well. So when you look at, for example, the batteries in China are different than the new 4680s that they're going to be producing for the semi-truck, for Model Ys in the US, and for the Cybertruck. And so, I think Tesla's been very good at raw materials and inventory management, and I would expect this to continue even as they start to make multiple different types of batteries throughout their entire company.
I think overall, largely, Seth, just talk to us about your perspective on China right now and the global supply chain, and whether or not we are seeing companies decide that it's less valuable, less desirable to be there.
Well, I do think when we're looking at the electric vehicle supply chain, it is going to be important for U.S. companies to start decoupling a little bit from China because the Inflation Reduction Act requires companies, especially for batteries and their raw material sourcing, to get them from the U.S. or free trade agreement partners. So for a company like Tesla, I think it's important to almost have two separate supply chains, one focusing on the U.S. operations, one focusing on China, that will allow them to, maximize the incentives available to consumers and take advantage of those U.S. Inflation Reduction Act subsidies.
A few thoughts. While this comment in general makes sense, it's logical. There's some incentives for locally made batteries and EV supply chain in general in the US. Wouldn't it be great for Tesla to take advantage of that to benefit from these government subsidies and incentives? Yes, but that's not why A, Tesla is doing this, and B, why it's in Tesla's best interest. Why is it in Tesla's best interest, and why is Tesla already doing this? I mean, hello, Battery Investor Day 2020, I think it was August 2020 now. Well over 2 years ago, Tesla already discloses to the world they have a patent for lithium extraction from spodumene. Why would Tesla have a patent for extracting lithium? Why would they be thinking about how to extract lithium? Here's why. Tesla collectively has a lot of brain power. And believe it or not, unlike many large companies, the collective brains at Tesla are actually often employed. That's right. Tesla actually uses their brains. So Tesla's thinking, we need to make huge numbers of EVs at scale on all the world's major economically viable continents. If that's true, then we would have to be really fucking dumb to not localize supply chain everywhere. Because what's the point of making vehicles in Europe if we're bringing everything in from other countries when we could source a lot of stuff locally in Europe? What's the point of doing that in China and bringing in materials to China when we could just source the materials and parts in China? You guys get the point. The same shit is true of the US. Tesla's doing this because it makes sense from a business point of view, securing their future, their ability to produce vehicles, and reducing their costs, not to benefit from temporary government incentives. That's icing on the cake. It's an unexpected and unplanned bonus, but it is not the reason for Tesla localizing supply chain. This should be evident. It's important to understand because Tesla isn't localizing supply chain in the US to take advantage of these temporary incentives. They've been planning this for years. They need to do this to execute on their mission.
All right, so is Tesla dropping Model Y production in China or not? That is the question. The market seems to have decided the answer based on early reports and ignoring the conflicting reports to that report. They say production is fine.
I love that he's pointed this out off the bat. Despite the fact that Tesla has refuted these claims, the stock market seems to think Tesla is lying.
Seth Goldstein joins us from Morningstar, equity strategist, covering energy and resources and Tesla. Seth, what do you think?
Well, I do think that when we're heading into a global economic slowdown, that reports of Shanghai producing below full capacity are likely to be true in December and certainly in early 2023. But, the market seems to take that to mean that there's a demand problem with Tesla, and that's why we're seeing the stock down so much today.
Okay, so whether or not it is because people aren't going to the factory or because the economy's slow, it's like, I guess, two sides of the same coin, just expecting a little bit of macro headwind?
I think so. I do think that we're likely to see all automotive sales slow down along with global economic slowdown. And so Tesla is not going to be, the exception. I don't think they're going to be able to achieve their 50% management's long-term growth rate target next year, likely due to the economic headwinds. But as they are able to continue to ramp up production at Austin and Berlin, long term, I think the company's going to be just fine.
Okay, so that's, I guess, the answer to my next question. If you feel like they're about to hit a bit of a macro snag, why the 5 stars in the bullish estimate with the $250 price target? I guess you're thinking long term past whatever kind of glitch is ahead?
Yes, exactly. I do expect they will ramp up sales. They should continue to have strong double-digit sales growth next year, just perhaps lower than what the market was initially pricing in. But if you look in terms of years, Tesla will continue to grow as EV adoption grows. The Model Y will continue to grow. Cybertruck will be released. Semi-truck's going to start mass production next year. And so, there's still a lot of strong long-term parts of our thesis that are intact. And given the recent sell-off, we view the stock as undervalued.
He said it, not me.
We left last week talking about the semi-truck. What do you think of the unveil, and does it factor into the bottom line expectations for this company?
I thought it was good to see that Tesla was launching a new vehicle after, if you go back to the start of this year, they said it's going to be a while, new vehicles will be delayed. They were a little more bearish, management was, on new vehicles. So seeing the Semi being released, seeing that Cybertruck is still on track to be released next year was in line with my outlook that they would successfully be able to develop these new vehicles. And, I think the Semi-truck is going to be a big win for Tesla, showing its long-range heavy-duty capabilities and offering a new product to the heavy trucking market.
Okay. Now, the analysis of the company includes your guys' economic moat label. I love the way you guys do this at Morningstar. You describe economic moat for Tesla as narrow, but stable. How often you get the narrow moat, but then the 5 stars? So it's a pretty interesting take, because it does seem like they have been getting a little creep from some of the competitors and some of the successful newcomers as well.
Yeah, so I should just clarify that the moat is our competitive advantage rating, and our star rating is more based on our price to fair value. So that's a stock valuation rating. The two are independent ratings from one another. But we think Tesla's economic moat is strongly intact because they do still have that brand intangible asset. They're still thought of very favorably by consumers, and this allows them to charge more for an auto and have consumers be willing to pay up for the automotive versus their peers due to their strong brand intangible that's driven by their market-leading technology.
All right. What should we expect next from Tesla as we go into next year? Do we need to get them to clarify the exact productive capacity? Should we be looking for any updates outside of the scheduled earnings?
I don't think so. I think we'll see the usual, production and then deliveries released during the first couple days of the new quarter and then the earnings call. I think it would be great in the upcoming earnings call if management were to clarify what their production plans are, what their pace of ramp up is at the two new factories, and how they view production at Shanghai going as a way to, calm the markets and put some better guidance out there as to what they're seeing in the near term.
Good luck with Tesla sharing any near-term thoughts and comments when they're a long-term focused company. Remember, in their earnings reports for years now, words to the effect of, we still expect to grow our annual production capacity at a rate exceeding 50% over a multi-year horizon. This won't change in the earnings report. Most stock investors, in my opinion, are both short-sighted and short on brain cells. Maybe there's a causation, I don't know. But wanting Tesla to give any meaningful feedback over the short term, good f***ing luck with that. It's hilarious to me. Constantly, the stock market analysts and the media are focused on right now, what's happening today and tomorrow. How about, hey Tesla, are you still on track for your long-term goals over this decade? Yes? Great. No? Okay, that's a problem. Let's talk about that. But no one wants to hear this on the earnings calls. They just want to talk about right now. The biggest signal is if Tesla changes their wording around expecting to continue to grow their production deliveries at a rate over 50% over a multi-year horizon. If this comes back and they slash that or it disappears from the earnings report, that's when you start to ask the questions, because that may be an indicator that the long-term thesis is not quite intact. Maybe they're starting to believe maybe 20 million by 2030, a little bit of a stretch. That's when we'll have some new insight. But what's happening over the short term? Whatever. If Shanghai, Berlin, Austin, any factory takes a few more months or quarters to ramp to full production, or it's a little bit quicker than expected, it's irrelevant. It's literally irrelevant. The only question is Tesla roughly on track for their long-term trend? If so, then all's well. It's been super fascinating to see the mainstream finance media covering these already refuted claims, these false reports that Tesla will be cutting production in Shanghai, continuing to run with the story as if it's credible, even though it's been refuted. But what if it's true? What does that mean for Tesla? Absolutely hilarious. And remember, if you think you can handle it, today's Patreon exclusive video goes really far down the rabbit hole. If you're ready to know how the world really works, you definitely don't want to miss it. And if you're not ready, I don't blame you. Maybe one day. Love ya.